rigging equipment for our fitness center. Is that correct?
Yes, you're gonna buy a piece of equipment, that means a lot to the fire teachers out of your materials adoption. That would be accurate
How was that approved?
through the curriculum group. Is my understanding, is that accurate, Julie?
Yeah, it's through curriculum adoption. I mean, it's just the same way science books are.
Because FIAD gets a time at the curriculum money too, Kevin, because they're
Everybody
part
does.
of the instructional program. So they're not, it's just so it's clear also, Kevin, we're not talking about doing building improvements with curriculum money. That is not the case, but the items that go in the center, which the FIAD teachers want, just like if they want, you know, a variety of whatever equipment they want, like they'll buy mats, they got that type of
Just for the
stuff.
sake of time, I'm gonna go on record and say I don't think that's an appropriate use
All
for
right.
that.
All right.
That budget, or Tricia, that venue of budget for that allocation.
All right.
I wanna go on record and please capture that in the notes.
All right,
Let's continue
all right, and then we got the
How
high
much
school.
was that rate, I'm sorry?
It's 9,007, it's just around
No,
9 grand.
Okay.
And it's 34 feet and 6 feet wide, and the FIAD teachers are very excited about it, by the way, so. Anyway, the carpet in the high school office is the last item we had on the list. It was trashed in part of the construction, and it was in good shape before it got constructed on it, so. Because the office is having its heating and cooling redone in there. On page 4, your expenditures are up very little. Predominantly that's due to your construction. Last year you guys did a lot of construction out of Fund 10. We had energy efficiency stuff, we had gyms, we had a lot of money spent on
I
it.
have a question here, before you move on, please.
Yeah.
So back at page 3, are these all estimates?
Yes,
So nothing is actual yet?
no. The only ones that be actual just are the ones, the sand and repaint the Kresge floor, because that's getting done now, like I said. And we're also painting the walls in there. So those would be accurate, and the 4 coats and doing the gyms is happening in August. Well, some of that'll happen this year, and some will happen next year. It's kind of a blast, because we still gotta finish the elementary school gym, the middle school gym, so some of that will happen. But the other stuff, the boiler maintenance, that's something that Steve's employee does. The chiller maintenance, they bring somebody in, that's all what Steve budgets. The roof repairs, depends how bad winter is, to be truthful. Athletic feed, that's what Steve said it would run. Concrete's just a ballpark depending how winter treats it. I mean, if you look at our walks, if we were in Arizona, our walks would look a lot nicer and you'd have a lot less damage to them from the salt. The asphalt cracked, Steve came up with an estimate on that. And that will get price bids from contractors. The same with the tennis courts, I'm trying to get bids. So, yeah, this isn't something that they're exact by any measure.
What was our 17, 18?
Construction
Yeah,
budget,
summer.
like 900, we spent 900 and, I mean, construction budget spent 970-some thousand, let me tell you.
Gotcha.
Okay. You spent, let's see if my memory's good, you spent $997,000 on construction. So yeah, you spent a lot, when you think about it, but you look at it, why did you go to referendum? You had a lot of stuff that could use fixing.
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of the nature of the beast. And we've picked off a lot of things. When you go in those gyms and you go look around the facility after Nexus is done, in the science edition, I think you'll say you spent some money wisely. On page 4, I think they said the cost went up very little because we had a lot of construction work. On page 5, if you look at that, as you knew previously, salaries and employee benefits are your biggest cost for the school district, the health insurance, dental, your salaries. That transfers, that's money that basically balances Fund 27. So basically Fund 10 has to give an infusion of money into Fund 27 to balance its budget because there isn't enough revenue that's dedicated to that. There's no separate tax levy.
Is there any approval process for the transfer funds from one main bucket to the next?
No. Basically what the DPI says is if we spend $4 million on Fund 27, which is special ed, And I get, handicap aid, like 900,000-ish. I get, some Medicaid, 80,000-ish. And any money that's not, that I don't get in revenues, we have to backfill, so it's basically a balance it. The revenues and expenditures in Fund 27 have to equal every year, otherwise you would be, not following accounting principles, and that would be something that we would get rid of. And it wouldn't make sense to do it, quite frankly, because at one time, Kevin, Fund 27, Special Ed, and Fund 10 were together, and then the DPI decided that it should be separate, so voila, there you go. On page 6, you can see what is transpiring with the different lines. Salaries is pretty apparent, that'd be wage-related issues. Employee benefits, the main reasons that's going up is health insurance is up 129,000. And the reason it's up is I told you I had the insurance rates stayed the same, but when you get new employees, I budget for a family policy, because I don't know if, George left and he didn't have insurance, and Susie comes in and she has family insurance, there's $19,000 gone with just one employee. That Fund 73 deposit that we do, part of that goes in Fund 27, so 128,000, that increases there. Purchase services down, like I said, because of construction. The construction budget's down 786,000. The non-capital objects is up mainly because you're spending 200,000 on Chromebooks this next year. That's a big cost factor in what's changing. Your capital objects, those are pretty much staying. That's more expensive pieces of equipment. Insurance, that's your property, casualty, and liability, very stable. The transfer, you can see for special ed went up, 90,000. The other objects, that's basically down because we had an adjustment in open enrollment, is what caused that. Page 7 is really just shows you on a percentage basis the same thing page 6 does.
Real quick question, so we had over $200,000 in savings and reduction in staff,
Yep.
right? And then we increased $292,000 in salaries, so,
That's what we're estimating, yeah.
right, so that's really reflective of the increase in pay to our current staff then?
And then,
Is that a fair way to look at
that
it?
would be a fair way to look at it, and if we, as we know everybody's for sure salaries, and things get down, we can refine it, but right now, that's what we're estimating will be the case. And we're also really with this budget, like I said, we put everybody in by building, which really made the budget hard to compare, because like Skyward sits there and allows me to compare, how many art teachers they have. Well, now they're in 3 buckets, so there's a lot of numbers that are flying around now. So this year's budget was the hardest budget I've ever had to do.
The point being, if we had kept all those positions filled, we'd be looking at a difference of in excess of $500,000.
Oh yeah, you definitely, well, you look at, you saved a lot of money by those reductions, but then when you look at your enrollment and you got 100 less kids, we've got to save money. 100 kids is 100 kids times 10,000 is $1 million. When you start thinking about how much money is going when these kids leave, because each kid's worth 99, just under 10 grand. So, yeah, you're welcome. And then why don't we go over to page 8? I think that is pretty self-explanatory. The revenues are very flat. This year, you look at it, it's really flat. I think you'll see in the next budget cycle, at least that's what I'm hearing from the legislative sources, you're going to be really flat next year because we have Foxconn coming on out of the state budget. It's after the election year. So they are saying that funding is going to be tighter in 2019 through 2021 budget, but God knows exactly what will happen to the economy, but there is some caution for the future, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Page 9 just shows you your revenue sources. Obviously, probably everybody know property taxes make up a good chunk of the budget, and state aid is your other main thing. So when you look at it, you got about 85% of your money coming out of state aid, and in property taxes. The one big thing that's really changed is that categorical aid that the state's giving. Now every school district is getting money, $654 a kid. So that's something that's really changed, and that's under the other revenue from state sources. So there's really a lot of money flowing into that. And going over to page 10, you can see where that popped up on that other revenue from state sources, up $386,000. But the thing wild about this, or kind of somewhat, it's good for us because you're getting an extra $204 a kid. The bad thing about it, it's disequalizing because school districts with Gibraltar or somebody with a really low mill rate getting the same amount of money as we are. And then there's schools, of course, that are much poorer property-wise than we are. So I mean, we're not in the, you know, the poorest of communities in any shape or form. But I said it's disequalizing on the tax rate. But I said from our school district's perspective, that $204 is actually good because with our declining enrollment, it allows us to get more money than we would through the formula. So it's kind of a contradiction in terms. But you can see this year that property taxes went down on page 10, you know, $514,000. Equalization aid was up. If aid goes up, taxes go down. I mean, that's pretty much typically how it goes. And like I say, that categorical aid is now up to $654 per pupil, which is amazing. On page 11, you'll see your equalized value. And as you would expect, the city of Mosinee is still your largest property tax base. And Knowlton is your runner-up, $20 million different between the two. And the rest of them are all much, much smaller entities. So, like I said, it's not much has changed in that since last year. On page 12, you see the revenue limit worksheet, which is the thing that makes my brain spin around, because you always sit there and think, did you do it right? Is there, you know, how is this going to play out for this next year? One thing that I thought was interesting, I was telling Katie, and she thought it was interesting, so maybe you guys will too. You know, when you look at enrollment in that down in line, in the middle of the thing on the left-hand side, where they talk about the enrollment for 16, 17, 18, one of the interesting things about the enrollment or this revenue limit worksheet is if you lose 50 kids, you gain $169,000 in revenue because of the declining enrollment exemption. I'm glad you found it interesting too, Kevin, because I was telling Katie that because she's studying, took some classes in relation to being a superintendent, something good to know. But now if your enrollment goes up by 50 kids, you know, I tell you a kid's worth, you know, $99.56 is what a kid is worth in Mosinee. If it goes up 50 kids, I lose $169,000. So I mean, if you got an increased enrollment right now, if you gain enrollment, you lose revenue. If you lose enrollment, you gain revenue. And that all comes up in that decline enrollment exemption that's on the left-hand side right towards the garden. So I said, this revenue limit worksheet is a little bit tricky, and it certainly provides you with some interesting stuff. And then that next year, that $328,000 decline in enrollment exemption, that money will be gone. So that's why I say, you know, that money won't be here next year. So we got to be thinking about, you know, what if people leave, who do you replace and what don't you, and kind of prioritize what you're doing. So it's interesting. It definitely makes a thing. And on page 13, you have the general aid estimate. Like we said, the aid was up, and that's good. I mean, I said that when the state showed that, I was like really happy to hear that. On page 14, you have the mill rate. The mill rate increase. You know, even if the rate, even if your property values stay pretty stable, it looks pretty good. I mean, it's not a large increase. Part of the reason it looks good is, you remember when we were talking about the construction on the science edition, we're coming under budget. So by coming under budget, I can use some of that money that will be under budget to fund the payment for the debt on the science edition. So that's one thing that's really, really good on this is it really helps as far as costs go as far as a tax rate, stuff
Not
like
to
that.
impede progress, but are those transactions approved by the board?
What transaction?
Transfers to those accounts?
Well, let's put it this way, the law says that you will do that, because basically, like, this goes back to that same conversation that we had about borrowing. If you borrow money, I can't, I mean, you guys can tell me, I wanna spend it on the swimming pool, I'm gonna tell you, no, I can't legally do that. So basically, you have the option, you're spending on the science edition, or you're not spending it on the science edition, and if you're not spending on the science edition, it's going into debt. So, I
That
mean, it's
on
one
the
of.
science edition? Science edition being the key.
They actually combine those in Fund 38, the science and energy efficiency exemption. So basically, yes, it's going towards the science edition, but they're in one fund. And they're part of, like when you have the debt issue, if you came upstairs, the debt issue is for that $17 million, you remember that number? Well, they're cablage there. So it's, yes, it's for the science edition, but it's kind of a, what would you say, a blended thing as far as, because the debt's together
Gotcha.
and and the fund is together.
Okay.
But I gotta keep track separately of the expenditures, because that's something, the finance guy told me I had to do for arbitrage reasons, which means interest earnings. I have to keep track of that, so. Anyway, yes, Kevin, so I won't ask you, but I will have to do that, just because it's law. Because see, what they don't want schools doing is borrowing money, and then somebody borrows money for X, and then they go, oh, well, we're gonna build a new football stadium, or I'm gonna build a new, wing for, art department, because basically what you acted on and intended to do, they want you to do it, they don't want you to sit there and freelance and do whatever. To give you what I thought was really interesting is because I thought, well, we need some new books and stuff for science, and I asked the attorney, and he says, you can't buy any materials, Brent, with science room edition. I said, but the books are for the science room edition. Don't matter, the state don't allow you to do that. So there would be an example of how strict they are, because you'd think, well, if it's 4 teachers in those new science rooms, it would be okay, but no, it isn't. So, anyway, that's the story on that. Moving over to page 15, it'll show you the tax levy, and then show you what happens with equalized value if it goes up. Basically, if our equalized value goes up like it did last year, the mill rate's gonna be like 9.58 versus the 9.39 it was last year. So we shouldn't have any real big issues with public coming up and talking to you about tax rates. The only thing that I do not know is if an area is gonna be reassessed, and some people are gonna be howling about that, because periodically, when there's reassessment, some people end up with a big adjustment on their property value, and then their property tax goes up, not the school district's doing, but because their house went up from 100 to 150,000 or 150 to 200,000, you always got a cycle where some people are gonna be ticked. But this should be a moderate year as far as the increase in the rate, so hopefully people won't be upset, but I cannot give you a pledge of nobody complaining to you about taxes.
Can I ask a quick
Sure.
clarifying question? So, back to the debt and this surplus or
Yeah.
money that's left over. Are we making our normal payment out of our budget, like we need to be prepared to do over a long period of time and just paying down principal with that remaining money, or are you making the monthly payment, so to speak?
You're paying principal and interest, but when you look at a debt schedule, they have the principal is always weighted towards the end. You'll have to pay more interest in the front end,
I
and then the
understand that.
principal builds.
So in essence, that money that's in surplus is being used to make the payment.
Yes.
It's not like, hey, I came into some money and I owe $100,000 on my house, so I'm paying 60 down and still making my monthly payment.
Nope, no.
Okay.
In fact, I talked about, because one of the things you remember last year I did in Ephesians, because of the referendum and trying to mitigate the tax impact. Well, I said to the finance guy, because it's a 20-year note, there's no mathematical way to prepay the debt because the bondholders are guaranteed this rate of return. So, yeah, I can't prepay it, so I have to use the money and pay it as we go. There's no, I would love to prepay.
That's a great explanation, I appreciate it.
I would love to prepay, but the bondholders were promised something, so Now, you cannot do that to us, but you're promised this rate of interest. But you got a really good interest rate, so we can't complain too hard. Tax levy comparison just shows you where the tax levy's going on page 16. You know, basically it went up this year mainly because of debt going up. On page 17, you see that the mill rate over the last 8 years, pretty stable. I mean, we're low at 921, high at 1042. I mean, and even the previous, you got 983. So the mill rates have stayed pretty similar. On page 18, you'll see we have the fund balance going down some. Partly 200,000 of that would be due to that Chromebook purchase, which won't happen for another 3 years, or maybe in 3 years. There's not a Chromebook, there's something else. You know, who knows what the future will bring when it comes to technology. The thing I would make the comment to you is if we end up like 1% over on our revenues over what I projected, or 1% under on our expenditures, you basically have a balanced budget. So you're pretty good shape, like where we sit right now. And I'll be curious as we get to October what happens. The good thing is you guys got a fund balance, so you can sit there and navigate. But if next year we end up with a swoon of kids, or a bunch of kids leave, you're going to have to look again at how can we save some money. It's hard to say what'll happen until September hits, exactly how the budget is, because that enrollment affects so much your budget. And just like if you look at a car dealership, how many cars do I order? I mean, for us, our spending is really dependent on how many kids you have coming in your buildings. So that's kind of the scoop on that. On page 19, one of the things that I told Mike in the Finance Committee is you look at interest. Typically, I'm always conservative on interest or on revenues. I typically go less than the year before, but this year, all signs are that interest is going to perk up. And I think really, if things keep heating up in the economy, I think the interest rates will keep going up. I said I don't know that I'll get to my old records of $200,000 a year in interest, but I tell you, it's looking a lot better than it ever has for a whole long amount of time. Your open enrollment, like I said, you've got more kids coming in, so that went up. I mentioned about the per pupil aid going up $204. On page 20, the expenditures, the personal services, the architect charges. We had some architect charges that were in the property services. That's why that went down.
On page 20.
I'm at page 20, excuse me. I know where I'm at, but I didn't say that. So apologies. But yeah, basically on page 20, you can see, the difference on construction. Like I said, you're at 997 down to 211. The supplies, every year I budget all the materials adoption under supplies, so that always looks good.
I'm sorry, we're back, I'm looking at the purchase. Is the difference like for the gas and electricity all because of the science edition?
No, the difference is because the business manager's nervous. I always worry about the scenario of cold weather and, and what's happening with gas prices. Now you look at, some of the politics. I've always kind of been cautious. I mean, sometimes these gas prices have gone through the roof and you read about people being frightful. So I always kind of have a little bit of a...
You're really scared of that.
I don't know that, I said
It swings hard, I know that.
What?
It swings hard, I know that.
Yeah.
Well, because my question is, if I
But
remember...
the promise, the thing good about it is last year, I wouldn't spend the money if we don't need to spend it.
Well, we talked about the science edition, and I remember when we passed that, and at the time, the operating cost, that should have been gobbled up somewhere in the budget. Is that gonna reflect in here somewhere?
So what's gonna get got?
Is the difference of the operating budget for that edition, because it's always gonna cost something,
Yes.
where is it reflected in the budget of that savings? Because we were not gonna try to make sure that was appearing in the budget would be cut to cover that cost.
So what you're saying is
What is the operating cost for that edition gonna be, and where is
I'll
it
tell
gonna
you a
reflect?
lot more after we get through it here.
Okay,
I think that would really be the truthful thing. I mean, it's kind of like when I got a new furnace a couple of years ago from Mike. I mean, you're supposed to save money. I guess we'll have a better idea of how we come out. But the thing about cost is what's this winter gonna be like? If it's really a mild winter, it's certainly gonna look better than if it's not. And then they have the statistical, numbers that I could ask the engineer, what do you think it's gonna cost? But, there's a variety of factors in that, and that's just an estimate. What's gonna be the rate for the fuel or the electricity? What's gonna be the temperature? What other factors are there? I mean, there's numerous things that.
Conservative approach is typical for those things.
What?
A conservative approach is typical for
Oh,
those
definitely. I don't want you to come back because, you read the paper, oh, they don't know what they're gonna do about their fuel bill. I mean, I've seen that so many times on the news and I think, well, good God, well, just make sure that you put enough money in there that you cover it and you just won't have to be on the news. And you guys haven't heard me on the news where I'm going, good God, how are we gonna fix the $300,000 roof at the Kresge building? We sat there and figured out how to do it within our budget, and we weren't in the news like the other schools going, well, I wonder how they're gonna do that. I said, well, that's what you pay me to help you guys do, is so that you don't get in the news to find out that you don't have enough money to plow your parking lots. I always think, well, how did you get to that point? I don't understand that.
You still on page 20?
I can be on page whatever you,
Okay.
but that's my right.
There's two questions. Well, the questions are good.
I'm easy
I like
going, I don't mind
that.
talking about budgets.
Instructional software, that has gone down. What kind of instructional software is that related to? Materials and?
The instructional software, I would sit there and say a good chunk of that would come out of the library budget. I know Lori buys a bunch of different software.
Are you asking why it's gone down, Kevin? Is that-
Why is it going
So
down?
part of it is, so there's there's all these different funding sources. One of them out there is the Common School Fund. Common School Fund is funded through interest earned off public lands that the state holds. Common School Fund has a very explicit way that you have to spend it, and that used to be really, really tight. And our current legislature has opened some of the horizons up on that. I would tell you, my honest opinion is it used to be too tight, so you ended up, and you want to spend the money, otherwise you just lose it. Well, now they've opened that up, so we've moved quite a few software purchases into that, because they've opened it up now a little bit, so that's part of it. The other part of it, I would say, is we are genuinely trying over the last couple of years to refine what softwares. I felt like we had some redundancies in the softwares we purchased, so this grade had this and this grade had this, and we're spending money on both of them, and they do 80% of the same thing. You've heard Julie talk about getting that universal screener. I would say that's kind of a part of it, because we can eliminate some of those costs. So we've tried to reflect that in the budget, that we don't have as large, even though we're honestly probably putting more instructional software out there, the costs are a little lower because we're using different funding sources, and we're trying to be a little leaner on what we use.
Yeah, the librarian, Brady, I see she's down, Lori does her budget, the librarian, she's down 5,400.
But you're moving
her
from there to
request.
some of our grants.
Yeah.
Last question here on this page. Non-capital equipment has escalated drastically.
Chromebooks.
Chromebooks, okay.
Yeah, they'd be at $449 because it's items over $100, and the Chromebooks are, I think Brady and I are gonna try to see if we can get close to last time's pricing on it, but
I don't have the confidence, Brent does have the confidence.
we're gonna
So.
whine until we see it. That's
I
what
got a question on the same page. What's the apparel?
What's the what?
Apparel.
Apparel, that's like sports apparel would be typically what you'd find in there. There'd be some.
I just noticed there was a big jump from the last 2 years, so I was kind of wondering.
I don't know what they're doing on that. Let's see. Let's see if I look at that one, because that's.
Is that uniforms, Brent, or not?
Yeah, I know they do some like that, and sometimes, that would be what I would be thinking of, is mainly sporting goods. And also we do buy apparel for the maintenance staff, get some t-shirts and
In
stuff like
3 or
that.
4 years, you're gonna see
Yeah.
it higher to buy renew.
Yeah,
And then they
I
have
know
to
some
wear
of it would be sports,
shirt.
I'm sure. Yeah. So that would be my guess of what they would be at those
It's quite
items.
a jump.
Yeah, it's.
Let's see.
Any football helmets?
That
No.
goes up.
Good question.
Got a question that I can't say.
Yeah, you're gonna have to
Apparel.
come back with us.
Yeah, they're 9,166 and 1,300. I don't know honest to God off the top of my head what that is. See, I thought it would be something with sports. Let's see. I don't know off the top of my head what account that's in, but I can tell you that answer, but unfortunately I don't have my computer here, so I can't tell you what it is, but I can tell you an update.
Yeah, you can get back to us.
What is it, apparel? It isn't something that I've got in my docket, but something is up on that.
Brian's getting all new suits.
Well, let's put it this way, if you came to my house, Kelly, you'd be pretty sad if I had to go to a funeral and you told me to wear a suit, I don't have a single one, so. I do have a lot of
That's why
beer
it's so
shirts, so.
expensive.
Yeah, you won't see me in a suit. I don't know if I die, I'd probably die in a beer shirt, so. What is going on?
We'll get that back out to them.
Yeah,
You can
oh
just
yeah,
keep
that's no
going.
problem,
You
that's
keep
easy.
going. We got minutes.
Alright, so anyway, on to page 21, I don't know if you had any questions on that, that's just other expenditure lines. Page 22, that's your donation,
Okay, I'm on 21.
alright,
What's our site rental? What are we?
that's the
what are we
hockey
renting?
rink.
Oh, okay.
And page 22 is your donations. Anybody that donates money goes to page 20, page 22 is Fund 21. That's your donation, so if you give money to the school and want to spend it in a purpose, that's where it would go. Special education fund, like I mentioned earlier, basic is $4 million-ish. And you can see how the money's spent in there.
Brent, on the hockey site rental, we go from 16,700 to 1,200 to 18,000.
Yep.
What was the
There was
dip
no,
in the
they
middle?
did not bill us last year for using it.
Oh, that was nice.
That is the intent, the hockey association.
Could nobody remind him, please?
No.
I didn't realize that until I did the budget, so I did not ask them, so. But I can write the hockey association and ask them about that.
No, thank you.
But, yeah, I don't know what the story was on that, but I did notice that also. So basically 23 was Fund 27, 38, Fund 38's on page 24. That's your non-referendum debt, which is your energy efficiency and science edition. And why, if you ask, why does it look like you spent 13 million in 2017 and now you're only spending 950,000-ish? That's all because basically county entries, because remember you did a refinancing, because you had the line of credit, then you went and refinanced it. So that's why those are all just accounting transactions. But you also had revenues of 13 million, and I didn't get $13 million of money, literally, obviously. Fund 39 is on page 25, that's your debt for your elementary school edition. Fund on page 26 is Fund 44, which is all construction for the energy efficiency and science. So when we talked at board meetings, what are you spending? Well, this tells